Hi, my name is Joe Jackson. I'm an interviewer, author, journalist, and broadcaster. And between the years 2015 and 2018, RTE Radio 1, a radio station in Ireland, broadcast my series, The Joe Jackson Tapes Revisited, in which I took a revisionist tilt on 30 years of interviewing roughly 1,400 celebrities. One of those shows focused on my 2001 Sunday Independent newspaper interview with Jimmy Savile. However, RTE decided not to broadcast that particular programme. That's why a month or so ago, when I began doing the Joe Jackson Interviews podcast, I included an edited version of The Savile Show. I called it Attempting to Unmask a Monster. And much to my surprise, it's turned out to be my most, well, I won't say popular, but I will say it's my most downloaded and listened to podcast. Either way, in the introduction to the radio show, which I included in the podcast, I said something that also applies to this podcast. I suggested that what we learned about Savile after his death should not be allowed to soil our own childhood or adolescent memories that may include the man, and that if this were to happen, it probably would make Savile smile. That certainly is how I feel in relation to my recollections as an Elvis fan, which are incidentally the subject of a podcast I made called Memories of an Elvis Fan, but which do not include any references to Savile. Even so, as I suggested to Savile at the start of our interview, in a clip you're about to hear and which I cut from the previous podcast, I first became aware of the man as a DJ when I was 12 and saw in Elvis Monthly a picture of him with the King on the set of the movie Roustabout. So, perhaps predictably, when I met Savile, I kicked off by asking him about his memories of Elvis. By the way, the Snowman's Club we talk about was an honorary club put together by Presley's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, who, Savile says, tellingly made him its governor. Its goal was to blur the line between truth and lies, or in other words, to con people, as I said to Savile. Given that I also said in my previous Savile podcast that his claim to me, namely, I am a professional answerer, I now take to mean I'm a professional liar, I can see why Conman Parker would make Savile the governor of that club, if he did. But there's an even more telling line in this podcast, and it's one I stupidly never used in the original article, maybe because I didn't realise how true it was. Savile, at one point, quite casually, and as an aside, says that Colonel Tom Parker and Elvis didn't know, quote, I could be as diabolical as I was with a straight face. If you want to read the full article, check my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com. Well, it's nice to meet you.
Oh, it's good to be here. Good to be here. Morning. Thank you. Thank you.
Kind of ties in with one of my first questions. It's a kind of lifetime interview.
You tell me whatever you want.
Okay. The jacket impresses me as much as the one you were meeting Elvis with all the roustabout things on it.
Oh, yes.
That's how much I remember.
There you are.
Okay, I saw the picture in Elvis Monthly and he was pulling your hair, wasn't he?
That's right. And all the pictures inside.
Okay.
They just found those pictures in Graceland, funny enough.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, just found them in Graceland. And they found them on the computer.
All right.
And apparently there's a picture of, one of the pictures of myself and Elvis just inside the front door of Graceland.
Really?
On the wall, yeah.
Oh, right, okay.
I didn't know that, yeah.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, but it was a super guy.
So tell me, which was, looking back over the 40 years now, which was more important, meeting Elvis or the Pope?
50-50.
Was it?
Yeah, because they're both legendary in their own rights, and they both stood for good things. Elvis stood for good songs, and all that business about him being a drug addict, forget it, because he wasn't at all. But in America, you can't die simply.
Right.
You have to die complicatedly in the States. That's where they make books and stories from. But El was, he had a liver condition, which, funnily enough, a friend of mine had identical condition over in England at the same time, and they both died in the same month.
Right, okay.
And it's called a flare-up thing, where your liver malperforms, and you take some pills, and dies down, then it flares up again. And one day it flares up, you take the pills, and it just keeps on flaring up and you're down.
Right,
It's called
okay.
a flare-up. So
you don't buy the stories of all the drugs in his
none
body and all
whatsoever.
that? You think they were
I
all
knew
from
the guy.
medicinal
I
purposes?
knew the guy, yeah.
So he never looked stoned when you talked to him?
No, never at all.
Or
never
on
at
speed
all.
or anything?
Never at all, never at all.
Right.
He was a truck driver. He was all he wanted to do was sunbathe, do a bit of karate, team around with his pals. He wasn't even a drinker.
That's true.
No.
Yeah.
So, but of course, in the States, you can't die simply.
Right, so many times did you meet him? Was it just on that set of Roustabout?
No, there was
right.
streets. I was on 3 of his films with him.
Right.
Wild in the Country, Roustabout, and Viva Las Vegas.
All right, okay.
Yeah, I just used to go and chill out there
Right.
because it was great fun, and I got incredibly well with Colonel Parker, and for me it was fascinating to sit in the Colonel's office
Right.
and listening to him do these amazing deals.
Okay.
Like one clever clogs guy rang up and wanted to take the Colonel out to lunch, and then rang back and said, what would the Colonel like for lunch? And he said, I'll have a steak and some marinated elephant's foot, you see. And so they phoned back about 20 minutes later. And this deal was for $1 million, which at the time was a lot of money.
Right.
And they rang back about 20 minutes later and said, the steak's okay, but they're having difficulty with the marinated elephant's foot. And he said, okay, the deal's off, and he put the phone down.
All right.
And I said to his right-hand man, a fellow called Tom Diskin,
Right.
I said, will they come back? And this is it. Once the Colonel's put the phone down, that's it.
Right, okay.
I said, surely you're not going to lose $1 million over some marinated elephant. It'll come back.
But he had a snowman's club, didn't he?
Yeah,
Where he was the great, were you? He was the great bluffer.
Yeah. It's called the League of American Snowmen. And I have a badge. In Leeds, a little badge on the ribbon.
All right.
Anybody who could do a snow job.
Yeah.
And the Colonel reckoned I was the governor.
Which is a con job for people who don't understand. Because you can pull the wool over people's eyes.
Well, it's a snow. You can't tell what's the real and what's when there's a snowfall.
Right.
You can't tell when's a hole.
But you can assure us that Elvis did exist. Elvis wasn't a figment of Parker's imagination.
Elvis
he was real.
There were 2 totally independent people. Elvis was entirely independent from the Colonel. They could go 6, 7, 8 months and not even meet each other. And the Colonel was a totally independent person. They were both immense characters, and for me, it was such an honour as well as a pleasure to have been declared in at that team.
All right, okay. And then I heard you even on Luxembourg the night he died, and you said it would be a night that will go down in history. And 25 years later, it obviously has.
Well, nobody expects anybody to die.
Right.
Not.
And you had
like
no
that.
inkling of it. You
None
hadn't
whatsoever.
heard it.
Right. No. But as I said, my pal died of exactly the same condition in the Royal Free Hospital in London.
All right, okay.
And it was exactly the same condition, exactly the same medication, and that was it. And all that business of where you would see pictures of Elvis puffed up, that was to do with the condition. It was nothing to do with fat, because you couldn't gain that much weight and lose it in a week.
Which he was doing.
No, in a week.
Right.
And of course, with that particular condition, they could take off litres of fluid from your body, and how you manufacture it, nobody actually knows. But 1 minute you can look like a frog, and next minute the fluid's left you and it's gone down. So it's got nothing to do with designer drugs at all.
But was it depressing? You say you rarely cry. Would you have cried when Presley died?
Strangely enough, no, because it was too far away. It was too much of a shock, and it was too long distance.
Okay.
It was 8,000 miles away, and it was so unbelievable that somebody like that had been taken from you, that you had to work that out first before you got
to the feeling.
Upset.
Yeah.
Now, of course, when I look at pictures of him and me and things like that, I think, what a waste.
Yeah.
The poor Solomon. It could have brought so much pleasure. He was such a kindly person.
Sure.
Oh, he was a kindly person.
He was a very spiritual person, though, too, wasn't he?
A kindly person, and as such, he actually wasn't part of the cut and thrust world that he was in.
All right.
Because it was a real cut and thrust world, and he wasn't really part of that. He was a guy, which is why he was on the shy side, because he never felt equal to take up swords with that type of person, because he wasn't into that game.
All right. He was kind of seminal even at the start of your career, wasn't he? Is there a memory of you playing Jailhouse Rock in a local dance club and realizing how it affected the kids and all that?
Well,
no,
not really.
All
no. What happened was that first of all, Elvis was a legendary figure because he was like every guy wanted to be.
Yeah.
He was a tall kid. He had the the long, lovely
This
black
was circa
hair.
58 in the
That's
Jailhouse Rock
right,
period.
black hair. And they had the smouldering looks, and
Yeah.
girls were going weak at the knees for him.
Yeah.
Well, every guy wanted to be like
Did you?
that. Eh?
Did you?
No, I had my own way going on. I had long hair. It was this colour. It was blonde colour. I was my own person, which is why I got on well with them when I got there.
Right,
because it took them something to get onto my bandwagon as much as it was I was getting on their bandwagon.
Right, okay.
I knew their bandwagon, but they didn't know mine.
Right.
And suddenly, I mean, for instance, the very first time that I see the L, now I realise that a lot of people say silly things when they meet famous people for the first time. Then they wish they hadn't said it.
Yeah.
So I jump out of the Colonel's car on the set of Roustabout, and there's the man. You see, it's the Colonel says, this guy from England, Jimmy Savile, and so Elvis sticks his hand out and shook his hand, and I said, hang on, I said, there's an amazing girl down there, amazing. So I'll be back in a minute. And I run down to where there's some extras, looking for this girl in a red dress, and I swear to you, there wasn't such a thing in the first place, right? And nobody had ever shook hands with Elvis and buggered off to try and pull a bird, right? So I come walking back, and he said, where is she? I said, can't see her. So I went like this, and two guys appeared, and he says, beautiful girl in a red dress, somewhere down there, bring her back. And these poor sods went off on this wild goose chase, looking for, but what that did, that established me.
All right, as different.
As different, and he was a birder, I was a birder, right? And
did you ever get the girl with the red dress?
She wasn't there in the first place.
Well, you got one. You must have got one somewhere.
Oh, plenty. Yeah. It was things like that.
All right.
Where I knew all about them, but they didn't know about me. And they didn't realise that I could be as diabolical as I was, with a straight face.
Okay.
You see? And the Colonel, he sussed it out a bit lively.
All right.
And he said, "You stay with me." And he was a great practical joker. We played some enormous tricks on people. These big heavyweights, Hollywood people. I mean, the Colonel, he didn't give a damn about
Right, who they were.
And I was a great foil for him.
Right.
We went to see his wife, who was not well, and she was in a private room in a private hospital. And he said to her, he says, get out of bed and go sit in the toilet. And she said, what for, Colonel? And he said, I want Jimmy to get into bed, and I'm going to ring for the nurse. You see, I'm not getting out of bed, I'm poorly.
All right.
See? And he got the ump because she wouldn't play with the game and go sit in the toilet. He wanted to put me in the bed. So I said to him, hang on, I says, I got a better one. And left her there, and I laid on the floor with my head going halfway through the little vestibule and the door, you see. And I said, ring for the nurse, ask her for a glass of water. So I said, right. And this nurse came in and never batted an eyelid. There's the body on the floor. Like that. And she sort of stepped out. Yes, Colonel. Can I have a glass of water? Certainly, Colonel. Give the Colonel. Went out, never muffed. Never.
All right.
Marvellous.
But anyway, was Elvis one of the first? Were they the records you were playing in '58 at the peak of the rock and roll thing? That's when you got started into being a DJ.
No, I got started into being a DJ because I.
And there, let's leave Jimmy Savile. The rest of that story is in the podcast. The Joe Jackson interviews Jimmy Savile attempting to unmask a monster. And the article, as I said, is on my website, joejacksoninterviewer.com. Thank you for listening.